Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Communities and Partnerships Committee on the 8th of October 2020. I would like to begin by welcoming those members of the public and press who are watching the live stream of this meeting via the County Council's website. Members, as you are now aware of the need to keep your video camera switched on for the duration of the meeting and to keep your microphone muted, except when I invite you to speak. Please click the raised hand function if you wish to ask a question or comment. There is always a risk that we may run into technical problems, and I would ask for your patience if we do. Should this occur, I will declare an adjournment while the fault is addressed and the public broadcast will be paused. If it is not possible to address the fault, the meeting may be abandoned until such time as it can be reconvened. Can I remind members and officers that all virtual meetings will be recorded? Members, I'll begin by calling the names of all members of the committee to establish your presence. Please confirm your presence when I call your name. Councillor Ashwood.
Present.
Councillor Batchelor.
Present, Chair.
Councillor Costello.
Present.
Councillor Every.
Present.
Councillor French. I believe Councillor French did say she might be joining us slightly late, so hopefully she'll join us shortly. Councillor Machini.
Present.
Councillor Nieto.
Here.
Councillor Smith.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
And myself, Councillor Criswell. So item 1, apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies, Nick, apart from Councillor French being late?
Thanks, Chair. No apologies for absence, but just...
Thank you very much. So any interest to declare, members? Do any members have interest to declare for any item on the agenda? I see nobody indicating. So yes, I have Councillor Taylor. Amanda.
Thank you, Chair. Just wish to declare an interest as a friend of Rock Road Library, which is one of the trial libraries for the open access reports in one of the items.
Yep. Thank you very much.
It's not prejudicial.
No, thank you. Okay, thank you. There appears to be no other indication, so we'll move on. Thank you very much. And we move on to minutes of the last meeting. Are members happy that that I sign the minutes of the last meeting as being an accurate record? Any comments or dissent, members, please indicate. Have all been circulated? No? Okay, I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. So we'll assume the minutes are approved. Thank you. So the next item is the action log. To present the action log and any updates, we have Adrian Chapman. Welcome, Adrian. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, members. Good to see everyone. There are a few updates since the action log was published for the pack, which I'd just like to run through now, if I may. Actions 245 and 249 on page 3 of your pack are actions that have been held since the start of the pandemic. I think increasingly our view is that, and this very much is supported by some of the trends in the numbers, that the situation with COVID is here for some considerable time. So I will take an action away today to attempt to move those items forwards so that an element of progress can be made against each, but nothing further to report on those today, unfortunately. Action 260, we will come back to this later in the meeting actually, but we would like to propose today that we convert the November committee meeting to a full workshop, and the issue here around the way that members will be engaged with local groups and vice versa will form very much part of that workshop. So I'm optimistic that we can close the action down following the November workshop if that's agreed. Action 292, the second point there that is still outstanding, a briefing note has now been shared. Apologies again that wasn't shared by the deadline. I know this committee more than any is very aware of the rapid pace at which things are moving as far as COVID is concerned, and we were still refining the details of the support arrangements for residents following the government announcements of national support schemes. But Nick has now circulated that briefing note. Members may not have seen it yet, but when you do, if you do have any queries or questions, please do come straight back to me and I'd be very happy to help. Action 302 is the next outstanding item. Chair, with your permission, I'd like to ask Peter Gell to give us a brief update on this one, please.
Yes, thank you. Welcome, Peter.
Yes, thank you, Adrian, and welcome everyone. Good morning. Yes, this was in relation to the requirement to register when entering business premises, and what we've seen since is that become a sort of mandatory requirement. So a lot of the interaction with these businesses is at the sort of lower tier level for your mental health services who register these businesses for food purposes and for sort of licensing. But there has been a lot of work. A number of the business supporting bodies have been involved with, and that's really where the question arose. So if you look at the business improvement district, there's certainly a lot of information on some of those sites. So certainly had a look at the Cambridgeshire one, and they've been very proactive in supporting businesses and signposted them to information and support. And again, when you're looking at the Federation of Small Business, the Chamber of Commerce, the Combined Authority, all these bodies that are out there trying to support businesses are very much signposting and offering support, and are getting regular contact from businesses, as we are through our own sort of council websites, where we're directing them through to Central Point to receive information. So absolutely, there's always more that can be done, but I'm confident that the bodies that are out there and that certainly can outreach to those businesses are doing so.
Thank you, Peter. Chair, if I might continue, so the second outstanding action against 302 is the circulation of the LGA guidance on the role of elected members. That has also now been circulated by Nick. Thank you, Nick. Just point out that that was drafted back in March, I think. So some aspects of the detail may have changed somewhat, but I think the overall spirit of it still stands. Also, the third action in 302, this is the Director of Education's advice on support provided for teachers. Jonathan Lewis has provided me with a short statement, which I'll just briefly read out and then provide to Nick for the minutes. John says that we've provided significant support to staff schools across the process of closure and since the reopening in September. This has included support via our employee assistance scheme for their welfare, for example, for staff in maintained schools, the provision of PPE, including grab bags to be available in the limited cases where PPE is required, and larger quantities in special schools, robust risk assessments, both at school level and for those individuals that need it, for example, teachers who are pregnant or teachers from BAME communities, and also prioritised testing for both school teachers and staff and their families. And indeed, the targeted education staff test centre arrangements are still running as we speak. John goes on to say that we've also provided significant amounts of support materials for dealing with mental health issues, including bereavement. I think most of you are aware John provides a twice daily, very comprehensive briefing note to every school, and I think that is seen as a national exemplar, and I'm aware now it's being read actually by a number of other education authorities. So so hopefully that helps reassure members that we're anxious about the school support. And I think finally, Chair, is the fourth action against 302, the inclusion in the November report on how the university's preparation work has progressed. We're not obviously at November yet, but I would just say that the Director of Public Health is producing a briefing note on the work that we've been doing with our university colleagues to share with members. So it may be that that's resolved via that briefing note, which will be circulated, I'm sure, fairly soon. I think that concludes the updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. So comments or questions for Adrian members? Councillor Nieto, Lena.
Thank you, Chair. Adrian, on 249, it says that it will be follow up when COVID COVID restrictions are lifted. Can you remind me why this is, please?
Yes, absolutely. This relates to the council's internal response to the scheme, the Employers Initiative on Domestic Abuse. It's a specific scheme that ensures that we support our own employees who may be victims of domestic abuse. I think at the time, the advice from the service, the time when this was raised, the advice from the service was that we were in a state of significant flux. Most of our staff were working from home. Services were operating at skeleton levels, and it wasn't felt to be the most appropriate time to progress. But that plays entirely to my point that we need now to move on with this, and whether or not staff are working from home, that they may still be victims of domestic abuse, or indeed know of others that are victims of domestic abuse. So it's one of the two actions that I will now be seeking to progress, despite the fact that we're not yet fully back to any situation that might resemble normality.
That'll be great, thank you. And do you think we can put a date to that or no?
Yes, I mean, I'd be certainly happy if members are content to report back if we agree a committee workshop in November, and then include something formally in the December committee report. So that would give us the next 3 or 4 weeks to ensure that we can progress to something more positive than just a holding position.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Ashwood, I see you're indicating. Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to pick up on John Lewis's report to say I'm chair of governors of a local primary school which is connected to a trust, and the trust and I have been so impressed with the amount of information and work John has been doing. It's made the job of the school so much easier, and I'd really like it. Thanks passed on to him and minuted, please.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think he's been very good at keeping members up to date as well. So that's very welcome. Thank you. So any other comments on the action log, members? Indicate, otherwise we'll move on. No, thank you very much. Can't see anybody indicating. So the next item is item 3, petitions and public questions. We have none. So we'll move straight on to the regular report from the Service Director at Communities and Partnerships. Back over to you, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So a fairly brief report this month from me, no less active as far as hub and business as usual activity is concerned, but brevity is the order of the day today. And also this report combines the traditionally separate COVID-19 report for this month, kind of reserving the option, I think, to revert back to a separate COVID report should we find ourselves needing to step up our activity as far as supporting residents is concerned, which we do anticipate needing to do. So the report still includes the COVID update, which I'll cover off in just a second. So just very briefly to run through the key points of the report. The first section deals with Think Communities, and I'd just like to say a formal thank you to committee for the support you've provided over the months that we've been developing Think Communities. It has culminated in cross-party support at GPC for significant investment as set out at 2.2, which will really, and we're using the phrase turbo boost delivery. I think, as we all know, one of the things that we've seen during the pandemic is the coming to life of a Think Communities approach. The way that our community groups, residents that aren't part of groups, parish and town councils have come forward without being asked and really supported neighbours and residents in their community. The way that partners across the public sector have come together, barriers around data sharing or this being too difficult or that being too difficult have simply been removed. And then our relationship with voluntary sector partners and faith groups has been, well, the best it's ever been. And really, what the funding that's been agreed by GPC will ensure is that all of that amazing progress that we've worked so hard together as officers and committee to establish now can become just business as usual. And we don't want to in any way slip back from the huge progress that's been made during the pandemic. And not least of all, because we know that many people will be struggling with the consequences of the pandemic for some time, either from a health point of view, economically or socially. So really proud and pleased that Council has committed this funding, and it will really enable us to further the work we've been doing. And the committee workshop that I've already mentioned, we would like very much to give over to what this means and the significant turbo boost that we want to show you in terms of the priorities and how they're going to be delivered. Yes, a significant thanks from me on the officers' behalf for your support. The rest of the report on Think Communities just sets out some of the ways we want to evidence the impact of that investment. You know, it's a great privilege to receive that transformation funding, but it also comes with huge responsibility. And I, for sure, need to be able to show this committee that that investment has been worthwhile and is actually making a positive difference. So again, at committee workshop, if members agree in November, we would like to talk through how we're going to establish that mechanism for measuring impact and baselines and so on. Section 2.3, just a quick update there on the social mobility working group, cross-party working group, which is met again. You recall last time we updated on this, we had a very long list of actions. We've tried to distill that list of actions down to a more realistic level so that we can do fewer things but do them really well and then move on to the next raft of actions. And again, that will form part of the committee workshop in November, because social mobility is one of the 8 initial priorities that we've identified for Think Communities. So we'll bring you a full update there. Section 2.4. Just a short update there on community safety and particularly the domestic abuse work, and reference particularly here to work on perpetrator programmes. Committee will know that we've spent some time focused on our support for victims, but it's really vital that we also work with perpetrators to seek to change their behaviours. And we've had a special focus on that over the last month, including working with probation, who are already running a programme to which compels male perpetrators to court when they're ordered to attend. But that gives us an opportunity now to engage with those perpetrators and work with them differently. We've been working with the constabulary, who've set up a new scheme, which is a 2-day course for perpetrators, first time low-level perpetrators in particular, who, you know, arguably we can likely have greater rapid success with in terms of changing behaviours. And these are low-level offenders who admit to the offence. I should say the term low-level when describing domestic abuse is a strange term to use. That is the term that's used by the system, but of course any incident of domestic abuse for the victim is certainly not low level. So, but it does describe the type of offender that we are targeting with that 2-day course. And then we've continued to strengthen our perpetrator panel, which is a monthly meeting where around 20 offences are discussed by a cross-agency group of professionals, to understand some of the consequences of perpetrator action, but also some of the causes and the circumstances that have led to that perpetrator activity. And the cross-agency panel is able to pull together a more rounded response, a mixture of enforcement, support, as well as looking at any additional measures that a victim might need to protect their safety. So yes, a significant focus on perpetrator activity in particular in the last month. And then finally, in the report today, the work we've been doing in the hub, around COVID-19. So whilst shielding still remains paused, we are expecting within the next week to receive new guidance from government on how councils are to deal with shielding should it be reinstated. There's no suggestion at this stage that that's going to happen, but government have certainly looked at examples of good practice nationally. I'm pleased to say Cambridgeshire have been very much at the forefront of those discussions with government, and the new framework that we're being provided with is just going through ministerial approval at the moment, but I anticipate will look very similar to the arrangements that this committee oversaw during wave 1. We have, however, in the hub been extremely busy in terms of supporting outbreak management generally and supporting health colleagues and public health colleagues to manage outbreaks, to support the test centre work that I've described, to provide redeployments where necessary, and to also start to think ahead in terms of what's going to happen should we start to see us reverting back to epidemic status in Cambridgeshire. So looking now at forward planning for that eventuality coming to bear. And also, and just finally, working in the hub to ensure that the new national scheme to support people to self-isolate, the £500 package, is up and running. That's going to be administered by district councils, and also then adapting our own support scheme, which is going to provide infill financial support, but also practical support for people that need to self-isolate, is also up and running. And the briefing note that I mentioned earlier covers in brief some of the detail of the local and national scheme. So I think, Chair, that's all I need to say today, and of course happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Adrian. And if I can just say how useful this regular update has become, because it allows us to keep informed about the different work streams that are happening that wouldn't necessarily warrant an agenda item individually. So a very useful development. Thank you very much. So questions, members? Councillor Machini, Elisa.
Thank you very much, Chair. Adrian, as usual, a fantastic report. Thank you very much. I did want to ask, you kind of answered this question, but I did want to ask about the, so the Youth in Communities monitoring system that we will discuss as at a workshop, which sounds like a very good idea. I did wonder whether we had, obviously not now immediately, but whether we already had any information about what we plan for this framework to look like, and whether we could have some early input, because I have some ideas and some questions, and I think it would be really useful if we, if we could actually properly have a collective sort of input into this, because I think it will be very important. We're going to have to, carry with us for very many months and years. So anything we can do even ahead of time, that'd be really great. And other than that, as usual, thank you very much. It's really interesting.
Lovely. Thank you, Councillor Machini. So thanks for your kind words, as ever, much appreciated. And also absolutely open up for input into how we measure the impact we're having with that investment. I think the reality here is we're breaking new ground, and there isn't an off-the-shelf solution to how you evidence the impact of investment in highly preventative work on the quality of life of our citizens, which is first and foremost what Think Communities is about. We need to tackle some of the challenges we face and give all of our residents maximum opportunity to achieve what they want and aspire to achieve, and tackle the inequalities we face, but also to help the council manage the increases it's seeing in demand. There are some examples out there, and it would be fantastic to be able to share that with committee members prior to the November workshop, as I think you're suggesting, and ask you to have a look at those. We locally, in our own organisation, through the Adults Positive Challenge programme, developed quite an innovative way of tracking the impact of adult social care investment, and that tracks individuals through that investment and the difference that investment has made to their outcome. So had we not intervened, what might have happened to that group of people? Would they have ended up in a care home? might they have ended up in hospital or something even worse in terms of their mortality. So we'll take some learning from that and some learning from national schemes. But I think we've got a chance here with your input to create something very appropriate and probably unique, that I think will work for Cambridgeshire, but also could be very scalable for other areas. So yes, the more input we can have from across the committee, the better. And I'm delighted to give you some homework, if I may, ahead of the workshop. That would be brilliant.
Please, that's exactly what I wanted.
Perfect.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other comments, members? I see nobody indicating, so thank you, members. Are we happy that we've noted and commented on the progress made to date in relation to the various work streams and commented on the information that would be helpful to enable the committee to track the impact of the Think Communities approach? Any dissent, please indicate. Otherwise, I assume we're all happy. Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Nobody indicating. So thank you very much, Adrian.
Thank you,
So we move on to item 5, which is the Libraries Open Access Project. And on the call, we have Assistant Director Pat Carrington and Library Support Manager Andrew Stoter. So welcome both. Who's going to present, please?
I'm going to pass across to Gary, who has been working with Adrian on the with Andrew on the project. So Gary's going to introduce it.
Thank you, Gary. Welcome. I hadn't seen you on the call, so you're obviously.
I needed to increase my profile. Good morning, all. So so this report is to update the committee on the progress of the Open Access project and to agree recommendations for the next steps. So as Pat has already said, the main body of the report is going to be presented by Andrew, who is the project manager for this project. But I thought just to put the activity into context, just as a reminder for colleagues of what Open Access is. So Open Access is a technical solution which enables library buildings to be opened outside of core staffed opening hours. And there are twin benefits to this. I mean, in essence, firstly, to extend access to the library for library customers at times when the building is not staffed, to do that in a safe way. And secondly, equally crucially, is it's an enabler for Think Communities, because by implementing the technological solution, it enables us to open up that network, which, as we know, is closed more than it's open. Fabulous network. It enables us to open up that network for communities and partners, and clearly that is integral to both the ethos and the practice of Think Communities. So that is what it is, and that is what it delivers in headline terms. What we're looking at today is and seeking agreement on is an approach to the piloting of the rollout, to look specifically at a CCTV solution and to agree that priority and commitment to roll out across the network. So I hope that gives concisely a sense of what it is as a reminder. And I will now turn to Andrew to address the main body of the report. Andrew.
Thank you, Gary. I thought I'd sort of go through some of the work we've done over the last 12 months that sort of led to the recommendations and just give a quick summary from the report. So it's the fact that we've visited our nearest neighbours who are using the technology in Bedford, Norfolk and Peterborough. And our aim to really learn best practice, and so we can hit the ground running and know the best way of implementing the technology. So 2.1 with some key advice had some really nice learning things. So we aim to roll this out across the whole network, but there was really strong feedback on not to rush this and to consider this as 33 projects, because each library has its own unique audience, but also the buildings will have its own unique problems, and everything will be slightly different. This can be things like working over multiple floors, or the age of the building, to how engaged the local community already is, and the time needed to get messages across. And also finally, that idea that if we invest in the buildings earlier, it can save us a lot of problems going forward. One of the key challenges we noticed was when we were visiting some of the larger libraries. We saw Bedford Central and Peterborough Central were some of the challenges over accessing the bigger buildings over multiple floors. And we have identified that we'd have 3 libraries in the similar bracket in Ely, Huntingdon and Central Library. And the challenge here is around the health and safety of customers in the buildings and how we get them in and out of the building with no staff present. So unfortunately, the technology can't assist people out the buildings. So there would be a revenue implication with those buildings if we were to open extra hours, because some form of staffing would be required. Bedford were using security guards, and Peterborough simply sealed off their first floor. So it's only a ground floor now for the whole building. But what I want to say is that the technology is not the only solution we've been looking at, and particularly in Huntingdon, we've managed to extend the opening hours with an extra half day by working with registration services. And they provide that sort of emergency cover to evacuate the building alongside staff, which allows that building to open self-service without the technology on the door. And that this is a model that we think could be extended across a couple of other libraries where we have a few more difficulties. So we came up with a selection of pilots, and we picked our libraries to have a district cover, so 1 library per district, and trying to do a range of different libraries. So in St Ives, which already pilots open access, we'd be installing the technology much quicker, which would allow us to switch on earlier and practice longer opening hours. So it'd be extending what St Ives has, but using the new CCTV model to extend it to earlier and later openings. Making use of the brand new Sawston Community Hub. Rock Road Library, which has an excellent friends group, which have been really keen when we first presented this to them. And also gives us an older building and see some of the challenges that faces. March Library, which is a much bigger building, and then the SOAM, which again engages with the Neighbourhood Cares Project and the Civic Future Libraries. We've then basically worked through the libraries to create a list that sort of allows us to keep the momentum up, hitting libraries that are relatively easy to install the software and have a big impact, where the opening hours will be increased the most. And then tying in with upcoming works, so we're not duplicating work. So for instance, the new Histon Library would aim to open with the technology in place. When Cherry Hinton Hub is refurbished in partnership with the community there, we would look to have the open access technology part of that refurbishment. And then finally leaving those slightly more difficult libraries towards the end, the Central, Ely, Huntingdon, to review whether we've been able to find other ways to open these libraries for extended hours. So in terms of the journey, we work with health and safety and property staff. And one of the key aspects, particularly around health and safety, became the CCTV monitoring. And this would be around how we keep the library safe, how we ensure we're keeping our duty of care up to those customers that come into the building. We saw a multiple of models which are listed in the report, and we've sort of in discussion with health and safety on what's possible within limited revenue funds available. And we've recommending the use of an hourly monitoring, which will be through our current security contracts with the council, who already offer this in a couple of buildings. So it's only a small increase, and it would be, they would monitor each library every hour that they're open, including opening and closing, as well as reactive monitoring, as they are already the main point of contact should there be an alarm call. They would then already be reacting to the sites. I suppose one of the things that maybe I haven't emphasised enough is we looked across 5 or 6 different authorities, and they are all continuing their rollout of this software. None of them reported any significant challenges. There's not been any strong health and safety implications or problems identified, and that they're continuing with their rollout. And it is a software and a technology that is being seen in more and more services across the council. And just on the procurement aspect, the procurement of the main technology went live last week. So we hope to be in a position to have selected our supplier for the technology before Christmas and ready to potentially purchase in the new year. Gary, was there anything further you wanted us to add?
No, I think Pat, you wanted to come in at this point.
No, I mean, just to say, obviously, we have experience of this in Peterborough as well, and it is a valued resource, obviously not being used at the moment due to COVID restrictions, but it feels like a positive way of moving forward in which to ensure that we can extend library opening hours, which moving forward are probably going to be more critical than ever as we move into recovery stage.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, everyone. Perhaps I could just seek some reassurance. This is an ambitious plan, so I'd like some reassurance that we've maintained some flexibility in there so that we learn as we go along from the pilot schemes, and they can change our plans or react if we learn things as we go along. So I see you nodding, so that's
yes, I think that was our hope with the pilots, and why we picked 5 sort of very different libraries, was so that learning could feed in and we'd be able to come back to the committee if we have any recommendations or changes around what we've learned from those pilots and the feedback.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Any questions or comments, members? Please indicate. I see nobody indicating, so obviously done a very good job, officers, in informing us on the plans ahead. So
Chair, sorry, there are a few members wishing.
I need to scroll down. Apologies. Yes, Councillor Every, Liz.
Sorry to wave frantically when I'm muted. That doesn't really help anything, does it?
Sorry,
So
Liz.
thank you very much, Chair. This is really, really exciting, and I just wanted to put this in a place-based in approach with the market town strategies that are in place now, or coming in place, where funding is coming from the combined authority in order to develop our high streets and GVA in those market towns. And really central to the high street development are the community hubs. And so therefore the community in the centre of the high street has to be the library if the library is there. So I particularly wanted to put a plea in for Soham is fine. In East Cambs, we have Soham, Littleport and Ely. So I really wanted to put in a plea for those to work with us on the market town strategy over the next couple of years, and particularly in Ely. We've been absolutely delighted because we've had the adult skills centre go in there, so it really is already quite a hub, but we need to develop that. And if we can possibly manage the open access there, that could make a huge difference to not only our footfall in the town, but the use of the library as well. So we're having those discussions now. Gary, could I ask if we could just have a discussion with you about what it's all looking like and how the library can contribute, but also how the wider participation and communication includes the libraries in what we're doing when we're consulting regarding the market town strategy on our high streets.
Absolutely, Councillor Every. So I think if it's okay with you, I can pick that up with you outside of the committee, and we can get together and progress the important things that you highlight there. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely crucial that we joined up on the different work streams, and of course as local members we can play an active part in making sure those connections are made. So yes, thank you, Liz. Councillor Ashwood, Barbara. You're indicating, Barbara?
Yeah, it's all right. Page 22, item 2.4. Towards the end of that, the report says there are 4 libraries where some details over partnership, etc., but it only lists 3. Is there one missing? And if so, which one?
That was good news. We had another library in there that was problematic, which was around the Camborne expansion, which we've now moved. We found the problem. So sorry, I left the number 4 in. So.
Excellent, thank you.
Thanks, Barbara. Anybody else wishing to answer a question, please indicate. I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. So, so members, are we happy with the recommendations? So we're agreeing to the 5 pilots at Sawston, St Ives, March, Rock Road and Soham, and agree to reactive CCTV monitoring to be carried out by First Reaction, and agree the priority and commitment to roll out across suitable other libraries, of course, subject to the learning of those pilots, as we've already mentioned. So any dissent, members? Otherwise, I'll assume you're all happy with those recommendations. I see nobody indicating. Thank you very much. So we'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you, officers. So we move on to item 6, which is the Cambridgeshire Registration Service Annual Report. And on the call we have Assistant Director Peter Gell and Service Manager Louise Glover. But welcome both. Who's going to present, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll be presenting, and Louise will be here also to help with any sort of questions that we get at the end, which we'll be happy to answer. So thank you very much. This is the Annual Registration Services Report. Obviously, what I'm proposing to do is to pull out some of the highlights from it as we go through. First thing to point out is very much those statutory services, those would be very familiar with, so the birth and death registrations, marriage ceremonies, civil partnerships, and citizenship ceremonies, notices, a whole range of things there which have been around for many years. And I think the other point to note really is the fact that some of the legislation goes back to 1836. So you could say that some things are very dated in the way they operate, and that ties in neatly really to a Law Commission consultation that was started on the 3rd of September. So there have been a number of consultations in the past, every so many years. There hasn't been a dramatic amount of change in the past, but now there are some quite radical things proposed in this. It's very early stages, so we're not in a position to go through any detail with you, but what we will be doing is pulling out those key areas. We will be responding and working with our approved venues, which will be impacts for them. So they are aware of the consultation. What we'll be doing is highlighting those elements that have a direct impact on them and working with them in order to enable them to feedback where they wish to do so. So as far as locations, we've heard really early on about the libraries and very much they're in the heart of our communities. Also our registration service offices, and you'll see there some of the locations that we've got around Cambridgeshire, so Ely, Huntington, March, Wisbech, Cambridge. And we're co-located in many respects with other services, and we've heard the good example earlier on with the library service, how we're working hand in hand there to try and improve the offering we can for customers. And I think that's very much the ongoing intentions going forward. We've heard also again around place-based delivering it, and we need to ensure that we are really in tune with the demands within the localities and how can we help and support, whether it's through signposting, whether it's the use of facilities that we have. And that's very much a focus and working closely also with Matt Oliver and the team in what we're developing there going forward. As far as the main report, so really looking now at sort of section 2, just really to pick up really on from a staffing perspective, restructure earlier in the year, we moved within sort of Agent Chapman's area, and as part of sort of changes there, took on the responsibility for the registration service. Interesting time to take over just as we're moving into sort of the COVID period, but I have taken it as an opportunity really to get to meet a number of the teams to go out to the various localities that we have around the county and talk to the staff. So what does it work for them? What do we think around the services? And it's interesting to see, I was really pleased to see the response of the staff during what has been very testing time. Also was a previous review, and I think back in March, there was a paper that Christy May brought, and we talked around sort of consultation around staff restructuring that have been planned. I'm pleased to say that during this period, we've been able to move forward on that. And I know Louise Ivars would very much say we start to see the benefits of that going forward and the opportunities for the team. You know, it's provided a structure that, to be fair, I think was outdated. It needed to be reviewed, and I think we've had time to do that and to make sure we put the right measures in place. And really pleased to see how that's the advantages of that and the outcome we've been moving forward. As far as accommodation, one of the things that has been mentioned previously was also aware of the CAMS 2020 project and the obviously Shah Hall closure, which impacts on the registration service. They're based outside the Shah Hall offices. Obviously, the plan all along has been to move into the Ashcombe site building. That is still the case. It's really just to highlight to members, it's been a rocky road. There's been a number of challenges with the planning committee at Cambridge City, none of which I think, I'll be honest, would be issues I don't think are insurmountable. There's been requests around acoustic reports and various things that we've met, but it has meant there's been some delays to that going to committee. So now we're looking at November committee date, and we've done what's been asked of us today in order to make sure we've got what they need for that committee. There is a level of risk. The slight delay on the Shire Hall movement has provided an opportunity, if you like, for us to continue to operate from the current offices, which is much needed, because until we've got a confirmed new site and we've got that planning permission, we cannot start to take bookings for a new site. So there is a level of frustration for customers that we are desperately trying to manage, and we're doing all we can to support a process of acquiring that building for us going forward. During September 2019, we relocated lots of archives facilities to the Cambridge Archives office based in Ely. That new office is there. I think what it's done now is that it's provided a better, a more purpose-built facility to keep our records. You've got additional capacity there. And as far as efficiencies and savings, we're now co-located with the archives service there. That's meant we've moved out of offices space that we were hiring. I'm ready to just pick up then on sort of performance under 2.3. The service continues to perform well as far as sort of the national figures and data. The area, again, which won't be new to members, it's a thing which pretty much all registration services struggle with, is the data around sort of registrations, the sort of 5 days. That's it's different for Scotland. There's no reason why it needs to be 5 days. It's just a data that has been set, so there is no real detriment to probably if it takes longer than that. But the delays are things outside of our control. So actually, once it gets to the service, it is very quick, and the service has worked closely with those partners in order to try and make that process as quick as possible as far as registrations and details getting to the service. But I think that inevitably will continue to be a challenge for authorities. Whether longer term that remains as an indicator in that format nationally, we will wait and see. But it is interesting to see that the sort of devolved areas in Scotland and others, that they have got different measures regarding that indicator, which would make a significant difference to us and other authorities across England if that were to be the case here. Just like to comment also on the finance aspect. It has been a challenging time for the service, as it has been for a number of others across the local authority during COVID, and we have seen an impact, as you would expect, on the revenue that comes into the service, because of the, we're in for that period of a complete lockdown and then sort of a phased recovery. Figure I've given you really is sort of what we're doing with sort of the worst case scenarios, the 550,000 pressure. That also includes where we have waived some fees to support couples. We've also made allowances there to support wedding venues. There's a combination there of sort of lost revenue and opportunities where we are doing what we can to support those others that will be struggling through this process. There's been a number of things which are highlighted under 2.5 as far as sort of service development. Don't particularly propose to talk you through those, but for your interest, if you've got any questions later, I'm happy to pick up on those. What I wanted to do really is just highlight some of the impacts that we've seen as far as the COVID-19. So very much going back now to the 23rd of March, seems a long time ago, doesn't it? That was basically overnight, sort of pretty much all the services had to shut down from a registration perspective. And one of the things that I suppose stands out from the service is pretty much all delivery. He's face to face, and obviously at that time that was very difficult. We don't know what we do now around the pandemic. We didn't have at that point all the experience that we know now about the measures and things that can put in place, and legally we weren't able to operate in the way we wanted. One of the things that government did do is to bring in deaf registrations, that sort of the virtual way that could be done, so that it didn't actually have to be sort of visits to the offices. That something that we very quickly got up and running and were able to do. One of the things that also I think it's turned out to be absolutely the right decision is we retained some officers within the office, so in a sort of COVID secure way as far as numbers, but we're able to keep those offices open. So, we just heard about the library service in Huntingdon. That became sort of the office base, if you like, for the registration service. By keeping it open and putting the various sort of measures in place to operate safely, that has really helped us get back up and running quicker than most of the authorities across the country. I think when we looked at the figures, we're really in the top 5 as far as the recovery and being able to switch services back on when we're able to do so. And I think that call was absolutely the right one. And at the same time, thinking very early on about what is it we would need to put in place with our other locations, how would we handle and support the public being able to access those services at the point we were legally able to do so. And working closely with our health and safety colleagues in order to do that. So throughout, communications has been key. We have a lot of users of our service, and as you can imagine, when you are in a position where ceremonies cannot take place during a period, that has a huge impact on people. They're quite memorable moments during people's lives, and there's a lot of expense as well, and it's quite upsetting. So very much doing what we can to support people. Again, often with limited information, we didn't know when things were going to start again. We've got approved venues that we very much were trying to support through where we have got cancellations. You're trying to encourage people to book again with that venue, but albeit further down the line. So the approved venue again has got that reassurance that there will be sort of revenue stream at a later date. So there's a lot went into that there. I think one of the things I would like to say is our contact centre have been really supportive over this period and have helped us get some key messages out that we've had to change on a regular basis. Guidance has frequently changed. That has posed very much problems for some of the businesses. So when you're changing from 1 week to the next, and you can have say 30 people, then it becomes 15, and you can have at a ceremony that starts to impact on their sort of economic sort of viability. One of the things that we did see was clearly with the lockdown was a huge backlog with things such as birth registrations. There's a huge amount nationally, and I think going back to the 9th of September now, there's still 112,000 nationally as far as birth registrations that needed to be registered in the system. I'm pleased to say that as far as our own service, we've caught up, and that is the case across the board. Nationally, there is still a backlog with citizenships ceremonies, but they are ultimately being held at the moment by government, and they are released in batches. So we're getting through the batches that are released to ourselves across Cambridgeshire quickly. We're putting on more ceremonies to enable those to take place, and because obviously people in a number of cases have waited a long time for those. So I think accommodation-wise, one of the things I also wanted to add really was during this, there's a number of things that we historically operated also from Addenbrooke's for deaf registrations, with that now becoming via say virtual live. That's not now been the case. Also, as far as our Wisbech office at the moment, we're not operating from there, because that's we operate within another building, and that building hasn't opened at present. One of the areas that we're wanting to explore, because we have very much been looking at the accessibility of our services to those around the county, and certainly with our Wisbech office, we're aware that some of the attendance in that, or quite a proportion of the attendance previously have been from out of county, people living over the border. And what we're wanting to do is to work closely with local members to explore where the demand is, what would best support as far as a customer perspective, you know, the public going forward. So the fact that we're wanting to sort of review that doesn't mean there's a decision to actually stop providing that service when we can resume from that office. It's very much just wanting to make sure that we are sort of informed going forward, and members can very much to direct where we go and whether we just want to resume as we were, or where there are better ways perhaps to deliver those services looking ahead. From a staffing perspective, I think we've been very I'm pleased to say that we've not seen staff or sick during the period from the measures that we've put in place. We've been able to retain staff at work, and I think we've seen generally better health during the period. We're very mindful about those that have been working at home in their own sort of mental health, and we know some do struggle more with that than others, and those that we're working to support and helping back into the office where you can do so in a safe way. There are a number of things that I don't propose to talk through, but you've got within your report, which are just some areas of some of the legislative changes that we can see coming forward. So you can see those are on the horizon, and some of the areas that we see as far as service development. So that is sort of a quick run through from myself. If there are any questions, myself and Louise would be happy to answer those.
Thank you, Peter. Obviously been a very difficult period for frontline services. So can I just thank you, Louise, and the team for how you've adapted and kept the service going. So so congratulations, and thanks for your work on that.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. So questions, members, or any points? Councillor Taylor, Amanda. You're muted, Amanda.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's it.
Brilliant. Thank you very much for the report. You have clearly had an incredibly challenging time over the lockdown period. And I'd like to say well done on coping with all the different rules about the different types of ceremonies. In particular, it's great news to hear that you've been able to start citizenship ceremonies again, because I know from dealings with some people I know personally who've been waiting for citizenship that it's been a very, very difficult time for them. It's good that you've been able to use the other venue in Huntingdon, and I think you made reference in your report to the fact that you might be looking at other venues. It would be great if citizenship ceremonies could take place within the community where people live, because that then enables them to, you know, to keep that touch point with the local community. So I'd be interested to hear whether, you know, what the future plans are for that in the different districts. I also wanted to ask you about the marriages from a statistical point of view, and the types of people who are being married. I noted in 2.71 the forthcoming legislation about that, including the one about making it illegal for a person under 18 to get married, making it a criminal offence. Very much aware of the problems about coerced marriages for underage girls and forced marriages, and have heard, you know, with there being a rise during the lockdown period where schools are closed and people not being able to pick up signs that forced marriage may be on the cards, and a reduction in the number of approaches being made to help agencies. I wonder if you can tell us whether you've got demographics on the ages, demographic statistics on the ages and demographics of people applying to get married, and whether we've seen any shift in Cambridgeshire.
Okay.
I'm just thinking, Louise, if I pick up the first question, perhaps you the second question. So yes, the question in relation to sort of venues and being based in localities. Actually, it's something we've discussed this week, Louise and myself, very much around looking at the figures from those that have been attending recently and where are they based from across the Cambridgeshire area to see whether there is a need to put them in different locations. And I suppose the challenge at the moment is finding locations we can use during the COVID period. But I think it's a very good question. I think it's only right that we do explore both what may be possible currently, but what may be possible in the future to provide the best experience for them from a sort of perspective. So yes, very much we will be looking at that.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to reinforce, that was a conversation literally we had earlier on this week, so definitely on the agenda to look at going forward. In terms of your question then about forced marriage and demographics, we don't analyse it as such, so all I can tell you is what I see. We normally do about 2,000 weddings a year across the county, and we normally take about 5,500 legal notices, which is the legal bit you have to do first, whether you're getting married here or you just happen to live here and say you're getting married somewhere else in the country. We work really closely with the forced marriage unit. So our staff receive additional training, and that's subject to annual sort of updates. We have very clear guidance and legal requirements upon us about what we must do if we have reason to suspect that there is a forced or a sham marriage taking place, and the staff are really good at picking up on those. We haven't seen any particular increase locally. I have a national role, so I will ask that question of my national colleagues as well, just to see if there's any data out there. The private members bill that's going through to make it illegal to marry under 18 is based on that for very good reasons. But I have to say, anecdotally, we haven't seen any particular change locally. And I would very much like to think that the training, support and guidance we give our staff means that if they did identify that, they know exactly what they should do, and referrals. And some of it's really simple. So, for example, on the back of all the toilet doors in all our offices, when we're open and allowed to let them use the toilets, we've got signs that says, you know, are you being coerced? Are you being forced? Here's a number that you can ring 24/7, whether you use it now or later. At the moment, obviously, it's slightly difficult because we're not allowed to just let people wait in our buildings or even use any of our toilets because of the COVID restrictions. So we have taken steps to make sure, again, that our staff are sort of fully up to speed with, if your gut's telling you something's going on, which is usually a very good indicator. We actually interview both parties separately anyway. So we do have an opportunity to perhaps have a quiet word with that individual. And again, if necessary, we hand out the relevant contact details and information. So I can only say locally, we haven't identified an issue, but it is a question I'll ask nationally as well.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to hear the steps that you are taking and the care that you are already taking, and very interested to hear that you're on the National Committee for this. Would you agree that keeping some figures would perhaps help us to tackle the problem better?
I know that they look at it at a national level. So the question is whether locally, because we've never had that much of an issue. And to us, it's been very much about working with the relevant parts of the community, because culturally it can be more of an impact elsewhere. And that's certainly something I'll take away and have a look at as to what more we can do. I don't think the numbers are going to be high, but we'll certainly have a look at them and see whether we could go to some sort of collation. I know that a couple of years ago, we did look at how many people under 21 were getting married. And as a proportion of our ceremonies at that time, it was less than 5%, but happily we'll revisit that.
Yeah, it would be particularly interesting to know about, you know, how many under 18s.
Yep, we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, lovely, thank you.
Thank you, Louise. So we've got Councillor Batchelor. Henry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question about process. I'm looking at recommendation B in the papers on page 37. I just wanted to ask quickly, is the idea that if we did support review of the service provision in Fenland, that when the findings were got, they'll be brought back to this committee for us to have a look at them, just to see if the level is where it should be?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very much to get some background data and information to then feed into the to the committee. So very happy to do that.
Thank you. Any other points, members? Thank you, Peter. Please indicate if there are any other questions. No, I don't see anybody indicating. So thank you, Peter and Louise. Members, if we could just turn to the recommendations, note the contents of the report, and support the review of service provision in Fenland to ensure that the service delivery arrangements are effectively and efficiently aligned to meet customer demands. So please indicate if there's any dissent. Otherwise, we'll assume the recommendations are accepted. I see nobody indicating, so thank you very much. We'll take those as recommendations accepted. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, officers. So we now move on to Item 7, which is the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, endorsement of recommendations. And we have Elaine Matthews with us. Welcome, Elaine.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Hello, everybody. Really nice to see you. This is the Innovate and Cultivate Endorsement and Recommendations paper. This is a really familiar paper that comes to this committee. So the purpose of which is just to share with you the outcome of the recommendation panel that we held on the 28th of September. And of course, as a reminder, on the recommendation panel, we always have really great representation from this committee through 5 elected members who join us as part of that panel and are very active in the decisions we make for this fund, for which we are very grateful. So I would just like to run through with you then for the panel, when we met on the 28th of September, we were considering both applications to the Innovate Fund, which is where organisations can apply for up to £50,000, and also the Cultivate part of the fund, which is where they can apply for up to £19,000, aimed at encouraging local networks where people help themselves and each other. So we had a really good number of applications for this particular round, and as a panel we considered 4 project proposals to the Cultivate funding stream and 14 stage 1 project proposals to the Innovate funding. As an outcome of the panel, we agreed that 3 of those Cultivate applications fully met the criteria for our fund, and we would like to recommend them to you today. And they're reported to this committee for final decision. So those are namely applications from the Kite Trust, which is about building local support networks for LGBTQ+ young people, an application from Fenstanton Parish Council, who are looking to engage a community warden, and application from the Lighthouse Ely, Linking Lives Ely. So Appendix 1 of your papers give you more details about each of those 3 applications that we'd like to seek your recommendation for. I won't go through them in full detail, but just to cover very briefly, the Kite Trust application was something that really interested us as a panel and really met all of our criteria. They're looking to develop new locations and activities that support not just the young people, but also their families, in order to strengthen the young people's own support networks in those areas. There's a lot of evidence, and there was a lot of evidence in the application to show that LGBTQ+ people are very disproportionately discriminated against, not only through bullying and things like that, either at school or in the workplace, but also more than 2 in 5 trans young people have tried to take their own lives. So the work done by the Kite Trust is really valuable, and they're looking to create the potential to increase the support networks for those people and their families, and therefore prevent serious harm. And they've asked for a total of £18,540. The Fenstanton Parish Council application is to provide a community warden scheme for their elderly residents, and this community warden will work across the parishes of Fenstanton, as well as part of a wider scheme with the parishes of Fen Drayton, Lulworth and Ellsworth. It will help older people in those areas to live in their own homes with a bit more support, but providing regular contact Monday to Friday to help them to remain independent and living in their own homes. We were really encouraged to see that joint working with neighbouring parishes, and this is a part of the fund for that project. Other funding has also been sought from other organisations and has been successful. For the Lighthouse Ely project, this is a project that they call Linking Lives, and it's a really successful, well-established national volunteering programme that we'd like to bring into Ely. And it creates weekly home visits with isolated elderly population of Ely and surrounding villages, and really helps to encourage their participation in social and community activities, building up those local connections and that companionship that helps people to be able to tap into that local resource if they need to. And we saw a lot of that happening during COVID, but we also saw where there was need as well. So again, another application that we were particularly interested in, and Lighthouse Ely have asked for £16,046. So just to refer committee to paragraph 2.3 of our paper, If you were to agree all 3 of those Cultivate applications, that would bring the total amount of money that we've committed so far from this fund to 1,382,128, and that will be a total of 61 projects that we will have considered through the Innovate and Cultivate Fund. What that does mean, and something I wanted to just highlight to this committee at this stage, is that of the 14 Innovate funding applications we received this round, 8 of those have met the criteria for the fund and have been able to get through stage 1 of the application and have been invited to submit far more detailed information on their project plans as part of their stage 2. Should it be the case that all of those 8 do get through stage 2 of the application process and are confirmed, that would mean that our total amount of grant funding from the original £2 million will be in the region of £1,735,000. So I felt it was really timely just to draw committee's attention to that, and just to explain that actually once we've taken out administration and other running costs, we're closer to the end of this fund than we were perhaps 6 months ago. So what we would like to propose, and this is a decision of the Innovate and Cultivate steering group, we'd like to propose that actually for the next round, we focus only on Cultivate applications in line with the current criteria, in line with the requirements of our councils. And then we bring another paper back to this committee in January to review how much spend we have left to date and then consider any future funding that would be in keeping with the Think Communities approach.
Thank you very much, Elaine. And apologies committee, I should have drawn attention to the fact that due to the short period of time between the panel meeting and the agenda publication, that I accepted this as a late report. So this report was circulated separately. So, okay, so any questions? We've got Councillor Smith. Mandy.
Thank you, Chair. It's just mainly to declare an interest, as I'm the local member for Ellsworth and Fen Drayton. So I just thought I'd do that, and basically I'll abstain the vote. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mandy. Councillor Ashwood. Barbara.
Thank you, Chair. Elaine, we've handed out money to some fantastic projects, which on paper have looked wonderful, but we never find out what happened after that. Is there any chance that occasionally we could get just a bit of feedback to committee on, say, 1 or 2 of the things we funded to let us know how it's working?
Yes, absolutely, we can do that. We do try to, each year we do sort of an annual review of the fund, and within that we develop what we would call case studies, where we share not only what projects have done throughout their funded period, but also how that's gone on to be sustainable. So I'm really happy to see how we can pull out a few of those and share those with you. And we could bring that as part of the paper in January, perhaps, to this committee.
Thank you, Elaine. That would be really good.
Thank you, Elaine. And just to reassure members, the steering group, of course, does see the monitoring, but you're quite right, Barbara. Members need to occasionally have sight of that and be reassured that that we're monitoring and how valuable these projects are. So, Councillor Every, Liz.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just with Councillor Mandy Smith, that I'm the local member for Ely.
Okay.
Yeah, that interest. Okay.
So you'll abstain on that one item. Thank you, Liz. So any other questions, members? I see no one indicating, so we'll move to the recommendations then, members. And that's to agree to fund the following 3 applications through the Cultivate Fund, the Kite Trust, Fen Stanton Parish Council and Lighthouse Ely. And to note the amount of funding potentially available for future rounds, as in section 2.4 of the report, and consider the proposal for future application rounds. And subject to the abstentions mentioned from Councillor Smith and Councillor Every. Is everyone happy with those recommendations? Thank you very much. Please indicate if there's any dissent.
If I may, could Could I just point out that there was an amendment to the recommendations there?
Which I believe is what I read out, Nick. So
No, it is. I was just wanted to raise it so that
okay, thank you.
have been amended.
So yes, apologies, Nick. So members, yes. So recommendation B, I did read out it slightly differently, which was aligned to what Elaine had said. So we've deleted whether the Innovate Cultivate Fund steering group should pursue continuing the fund beyond the current financial envelope, and substituted the proposal for future application rounds. There is sufficient funds to do some more Cultivate bids, but obviously by the time we have a report in January, we'll need to be thinking about future funding. But it does allow us to carry on, as Elaine said, with some Cultivate funding in the meantime, which would allow us to do another round and advertise as such. So members, are they happy with that way forward? Please indicate if not. Thank you very much. No indication, so we'll assume those are accepted. Thank you very much, everybody. So we move on to item 8, which is the Community Champions Annual Review. And over to you again, Elaine, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So with respect, I think I'll introduce the paper to you all, and then would like to hand over to the community champions who are in this meeting to share their own updates, if that's agreeable to everybody. So just to give you the reason for this, the purpose of this paper is just to provide you with a summary of the role of our elected community champions and activities carried out during the 12-month period of August 2019 to the end of July 2020. The brief background of this is known to this committee, but I will just go over that again. So in May 2017, it was agreed that the membership of this Communities and Partnership Committee would include one member from each city or district area to reflect the political control of the respective city or district council to undertake an enhanced role. And we agreed at that time that the enhanced role was known as Area Champion. And then in 2018, committee agreed to a change in name from Area Champion to Community Champion. In May 2019, on 20th of May 2019, this committee agreed the priorities for those community champions, and they're listed at 1.2 of this report. 9 priorities which mirrored the priorities of the Communities and the Partnership Committee. Members appointed and who have carried out the role during this last 12 months period are shown at paragraphs or sections 1.3. And in Cambridge City, Councillor Richards was the community champion up until 19th of May 2020, when Councillor Machini was welcomed back and has taken on the role again from the 20th of May 2020. In Fenland, it's remained as Councillor French, in East Cambridgeshire, Councillor Every, and in Huntingdonshire, Councillor Costello. South Cambridgeshire has a vacant post as agreed with that group. So community champions have the remit to develop their own networks, their own priorities and ways of working appropriate for the areas where they serve. And they have an opportunity at the end of every single community and partnership committee to give oral feedback on their activities and updates at each of those meetings. Throughout the year, we've been holding monthly meetings with all of our community champions and workshops, and they continued right up until March 2020, when unfortunately we had to postpone those meetings because officers within my team and myself and other service areas, and of course members themselves, were fully engaged with the COVID-related activity. So as part of our regular meetings, community champions have engaged with various service leads on matters of council and community and committee priorities, and really developed a much deeper understanding of some of those key issues relating to the priorities and how they might impact in their own local areas as well. At section 2.3, I've given you a list there of the various priorities that were discussed during those meetings throughout that period. It includes representations from Library Presents, certainly youth engagement was a really active workshop that we carried out at the time, the whole housing programme, military covenant work that's been going on across council but also at district level, and the impact of poverty. We've discussed the local assistance scheme, and of course members here as well as the wider membership have been very actively involved in helping to promote the Innovate and Cultivate Fund, and then also playing a role in making sure that applications that came forward were appropriate for our fund. In between meetings, our members keep busy with lots of other activities, and we make sure that they receive appropriate updates and timely information by email, which they then share or do something with, is the word I'm looking for, then relevant for their own local areas. And at section 2.4, again, I've got a list of the type of things that we have been sharing with our members regularly. It's not an exhaustive list, but it gives you a flavour of the type of regular communication we have with and from our community champions throughout the year. So looking ahead for the next year, for 2020 to 21, in section 2.4, you see there that we are proposing that community champions will develop their forward plan, and it will look to be using the priorities already agreed by the Communities and Partnership Committee on the 3rd of September. So specifically, you'll see there the 8 priorities that we often call now the Think Communities Unified Approach priorities, and we would propose that they become the priorities for this coming year for our community champions. So finally from me, I would just like to say that thank you to all of the community champions who've played a role during this year. It's great to work with you, and as officers we find it really useful to be able to have this more detailed conversations with you on a regular basis and be able to have that exchange of views. So a summary of the main progress and outcomes of activity has been provided by community champions shown at Appendix 1. And I'd now like to invite those community champions who are present today to maybe run through their own updates as shown at Appendix 1.
Thank you, Elaine. So thanks from me also to the community champions, because I've seen firsthand some of the good work they've been doing. So I'll take champions in the order that they're in the papers, if I may, please. So Councillor Machini, Lisa, would you like to elaborate on your report?
Oh, yes, thank you very much. So the substance is in the report, as I've said. I've only got just under half a year's worth of work to report on. And I think this is a good opportunity for me to thank my predecessor. She's done an excellent job in the first half of the year. She's unfortunately unable to report now because of health reasons. She's had to abandon the role, but I'd like to remember the work that she's done around homelessness and around the community safety, and I will hope to bring some up-to-date information on her health soon at some point. It would be lovely to hear something in her own words, but she's bedridden and awaiting surgery at the moment, so that's effectively why we haven't got her up-to-date report here with us today, but she's definitely done an enormous amount of work up to here. In terms of me, when I took over, obviously we were in the middle of lockdown and everything was a little bit different than you might have expected, or than I remember when I was doing the role in 2017. We have had a lot of work that we've done together with the executive councillors in Cambridge City in directing the resources of the hub and basically keeping in touch with effectively all of how that run. It was great to have that window of communication. Cambridge City runs very efficiently, and it was great to be part of that effort. In terms of looking to the future, obviously we hope that next year will be different. We hope that we won't have this level of pandemic alert to deal with for the next 12 months. It would be very good. I would like to, as I've indicated in my report, continue to work with Cambridge City in the way that they deliver their services to their community. They have a review coming up, which I hope to participate in. And in terms of effectively challenges ahead, as I said, obviously we hope that the future will be easier in terms of lockdown. But we also hope that we will be able to work a little bit better together in terms of being a bit more cohesive. I figured I wouldn't necessarily sugarcoat the pill too much here. I mean, there are some challenges in the way that the City Council and the County Council work together. Most of those challenges are political, and in the way that the City Council feel that they are, in effect, considered and worked with by the County Council. We know that a lot of that is political, and that is a big challenge in the role, and one that I propose to work a little bit closer on, assuming that we don't have, because I'm sure that there's a lot more that we could do together in that sense, and there's a lot more that we could bring to the Communities and Partnership Committee and get effectively a much more positive response than perhaps the City Council feel that they would get. And that is potentially one of the challenges that I've already initiated some work with the executive councillors, and I hope that we will be able to have a more cooperative approach in 2020, 2021. I remain a little bit unsure about how much of the year ahead is going to be taken up in pandemic measures, but we will see. And I, of course, welcome any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Lisa. Just a comment from me regarding your concerns around liaison with City Council. Absolutely, we should be working very closely with the City Council, and certainly through our place-based working we have planned and local commissioning. We need to be working with the district as one. So if there is a barrier there, I shall have discussions with Adrian around how officers can perhaps liaise better. But I certainly, as a committee chair, I'm very happy to meet with lead members on the City Council because I do not want policy and politics to get in the way of us working closely together. So very happy to arrange to get together with lead members at City to unblock any barriers that seem to be holding up progress. So thank you for pointing that out, Elisa. That mustn't get in the way. So any questions for Elisa, anyone? Okay, thank you very much for your work, Elisa. So we move on to Councillor Avery. Would you like to elaborate on your lengthy report, Liz? Thank you.
Councillor Avery's left.
You think she's dropped out? You think, Nick?
It appears that she's not here at the moment.
Okay, thank you. Might be a technical glitch, but we'll come back to her if she returns. So, Adela, anything you'd like to add to your report?
Yes, thank you. Obviously, there's a lot in my report, and it speaks for itself. But I think what I wanted to share with you all is my latest project, which we launched last week, which I mentioned under the first thing with the Centrals by Sue, called Winter Warmers. We're concerned about fuel poverty and our improving social mobility. And it does concern me that this winter, with possibly a rise in unemployment and very difficult situations for people, they are going to turn off their heating and sit in the cold, and that will affect the whole range of people: the elderly, disabled, young people, mums with small babies. So I'm working together with officers from HDC, from Cambridgeshire, with a member of the WI and officers from our libraries. We have sent out an advert to the WI members and also to the time banking members throughout Huntingdonshire to ask for donations of scarves, hats, baby clothes, blankets, whatever. And the plan is, the way we're using the libraries is this is going to be a drop-off point. So the poster actually says, and we have the agreement of our local libraries, that people can drop off supplies week beginning the 9th of November and all that week. And then we have a collection vehicle that will go around the libraries and collect the supplies. and then they're going to be deposited in a warehouse in Huntingdon. Once we have a supply and we know what we've got, then we will contact the appropriate services, so adult social care, schools, homeless people, and use those services to distribute. So we don't know how it's going to work. We'll see how it goes. But if it does work, we're planning to do another one after Christmas, so that we can pick up all unwanted Christmas presents. And that would probably be a lot of socks and scarves and hats. But we thought if we did it again in January, we'd have another source of items that we could use. So, and then there's the rest of my report, which you can read. So, and if you want to ask me any questions, well, if you have to.
Thank you, Adela. So any points to raise, members? Councillor Nieto, Lena.
Yeah, no, it was not only for Adela, it was for the champions in general. I can wait if.
There's nobody else indicating, Lena, so I think you can go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, no, I just wanted to thank the champions for the extra work that they do, because I think it is very valuable that they put that kind of extra resource and coordination on in their district. And of course, the support from Elaine to them, I think is wonderful. I just wanted to see if the champions would consider, I really like Liz's report, how it broke down in the sense that it aligns to corporate priorities, and then it would kind of help to focus the attention on the activities, and also to make that alignment with kind of a line of sight with business priorities. So so I don't know if that's just a thought, and of course something for the champions to decide.
Yes, thank you, Lena. There is a template, obviously, for them to use if they wish to do so. So I'm sure they'll take that on board, Lena. Thank you. Any other points anybody would like to make? I see Councillor Every still isn't here, so we'll take her report.
If I may, Chair, very quickly, since we're here, I will just say very briefly, thank you so much to Elaine for all the work that she's done and in effect, helping me. I think I've been the sort of, well, I was an early arrival and now I'm a late arrival, and it's all a little bit up in the air. And, you know, she's been fantastic in basically just, you know, answering every question, etc. And I look forward to actually, you know, making her continue to work and asking her a lot of questions. And and Adrian as well, everyone's been absolutely amazing. And I would like to really thank them for all the extra work that they do in connection to our role. And as I said, I have some ideas for the future, and I would really like, you know, to get my teeth stuck into a few more things. And I hope in due course to bring you all on board. And thank you very much for the time that you spend.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Lisa, and I agree. I think we're very fortunate on how our officers support this committee. So, so thank you, Elaine, and all. Any other points any members would like to make? I see nobody indicating, in which case we'll move to the recommendations, members.
Chair, Liz is back.
Okay. Liz, I notice you've just joined us. Is there anything you'd like to say to elaborate?
Only that I just wanted to say how fantastic it's been this year working with the staff on the Think Communities projects, which we're trying to embed in the district. And just to say that, as with others, our tasks are sometimes very small and individual, but sometimes much larger. And obviously we're working towards sustainability, which I think is really, really key. And ensuring, of course, that we do spread the word on the Think Communities and work on behalf of the of our residents. I have to say some of the highlights have been working on the submissions for the capital funds and the Innovate and Create funds, because this has engaged me more with our parish councils than ever would have otherwise. And I think the key now is if they can't get money from us, where else can they get money from, and can I help them do that? So yeah, it's been a really good year. I've really enjoyed it. But huge thanks to the staff who have supported us and helped us engage in the appropriate way for the benefit of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. So Councillor Batchelor, you'd just like to come in, Henry?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. When we come to the recommendations, could I request that we take A and B separately, please? As obviously our group agrees with A, but we're more comfortable abstaining on B, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Just to ask, Henry, does your group have any alternative priorities for the champions?
No, as our group doesn't agree with the principle of champions, we're going to abstain on that item.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members, any other comments? In which case we'll move to the recommendations and take recommendation A first, members. And because we're separating them out, I'll just ask members in turn if they agree with the recommendation. So a recommendation, any dissent on recommendation A, please, which we'll take on block if everyone's happy. I see no dissent, so recommendation A, to consider the Outputs and Achievements Committee champions from August 19 to July 20. I'll assume, members, that that's approved. No dissent, thank you very much. In which case we then move on to recommendation B, agree the priorities for community champions for the forthcoming 12 months. And I'll go through and take a vote on those then, members, as it seems like not everybody is supportive. So I'll ask each committee member in turn if they agree with the recommendation to please say yes or no. So Councillor Ashwood.
Abstain.
Councillor Batchelor.
Abstain.
Councillor Costello.
Yes.
Councillor Every.
Yes.
Councillor French. Councillor French hasn't joined us, so Councillor Machini.
Agree.
Councillor Nieto.
Agree.
Councillor Smith.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Abstain.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And myself, Councillor Criswell, I agree. So Nick, could you just report the outcome, please, of the vote?
Thanks, Chair. Yes, that's 6 members in favour and 3 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So that recommendation is approved as well. Thank you, members. So thank you very much, officers. We'll move on to item 9, which is the business planning proposals for 2021 to 2026, opening update and overview, and following late changes being made to the report in order to incorporate the most up-to-date information possible in relation to the COVID-19 affecting business planning process. I've accepted this as a late report, and to present we have Adrian Chapman, assisted by Emma Jones, who's the senior finance business partner. So over to you. I think you're introducing first, Adrian. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that's correct. And yes, very pleased to be joined by Emma, who is very much the brains of the operation. So the difficult techie questions, we'll make sure go to Emma. But as the Chairman suggests, this is very much an initial overview report, as is traditional to be presented to committee in October. And I'll just say a few opening remarks, really. Firstly, that we've clearly had a very different year, and it's likely to continue to be a different year. And also, we don't really know, nobody can tell quite what the future holds. And so business planning in that climate is really challenging. Notwithstanding those challenges, though, I think the Council remains committed to a long-term business planning cycle, and I think the ability to look ahead 5 years remains really vital, more so than ever in the current climate, albeit that we'll need to be flexible and agile and fairly fleet of foot should circumstances change. So When the business planning proposals do come back to you in full in December, it will still resemble a 5-year forward view with detailed proposals for the coming year, but a 5-year view with those caveats built in. Obviously, the council's been leading a lot of the work in relation to COVID. We reported back to this committee fairly comprehensively on what that's meant financially for the organisation and for our own services here within the services that you're responsible for. And that has had a challenging effect, albeit that we're very grateful for the payments received so far, the financial help provided by government so far to support some of those challenging conditions. And probably worth pointing out or exemplifying a little further the challenge of identifying what traditionally would be efficiencies and savings opportunities, as well as opportunities to develop commercial proposals in the current context. And that's because we face, as community leaders, as a significant employer and a provider of services, 3 really challenging scenarios that we must contend with over the coming period. The first is our contribution to support economic recovery. There is no question that the pandemic has already and will probably continue to impact on the economic climate that we face and the impact on citizens that this committee will be particularly focused on, but also on GDP generally, is a big concern. And identifying council efficiencies against that backdrop is more challenging than ever. Second, and partially as a consequence of economic challenge in households, but not exclusively so, we are forecasting an increase in demand for council services. As people maybe lose their jobs, there will be pressure on people's ability to maintain their homes, afford to pay their bills, and all of the ongoing consequences that might impact on social care that follow could play out. And actually the scenario planning work that we have used to so far model our business planning becomes really important there, so that we can try and, as best we can, forecast what that demand might look like. And then thirdly, our Think Communities approach, which is about making things local and described in the paper as Cambridgeshire local. This is about really pushing hard the agenda that this committee has championed and has led to help mitigate the economic challenges that the communities will be facing, and also the increases in demand that we're anticipating through a localised approach. So all of that in normal times is a hugely challenging set of scenarios. But if you set all of that in the context of trying to achieve efficiencies and a balanced budget, it becomes even more of a difficulty. Basically, what I'm saying is it's not easy, and it never is. But this year in particular is particularly problematic. That said, this committee has led, as we've said before in this meeting today, some incredible work to mitigate some of the pressures, both caused by the pandemic and also tackling some of the challenges that the county faces and its residents face, and has done a sterling job. And at this point, the October Business Planning Report at section 5, which is normally where we would present to you some of the initial ideas for efficiencies, it's therefore no surprise that the only thing we're talking about in section 5 is the Think Communities investment. And given the 3 sets of conditions that I've already described, Think Communities to Cambridgeshire local approach becomes ever more important. So our role, I think, here as a committee and as a group of officers supporting the committee is to help deliver our priorities robustly, at speed and sustainably, in order to mitigate economic challenges and to try and prevent and delay demand on behalf of the other service committees. And I think this year is never more important. So only one aspect really for this committee to review, and that's the Think Communities investment, which I think we've already done today. And I'll invite Emma now to add any detail that I may have missed and pick up on any of the numbers that need highlighting.
Yeah, so I suppose I'd just start by underlying it's been one of the more unusual business planning processes to date, and there's still a lot of uncertainty in all the numbers included in here. We have built the current position based on our usual method of building in inflation and demand and pressures that we know about. And as Adrian mentioned, we've also built in some particular scenarios where we think we'll see some impact from COVID-19. So I believe for C&P, we've got something in particular around domestic abuse, and also recognising there's likely to be a loss of income around registration service and ceremonies moving into future years. This work, combined with the work across all the other committees, takes us to a predicted bottom line gap of about £33 million, which is obviously quite significant. And I suppose our job as officers over the coming months will be to try and work to close that gap and come back in December with a much smaller gap, if at all possible. As again said, a lot of the work across communities and partnerships will be focused around Think Communities and that preventative agenda, which is laid out in section 5.2. And I think aside from that, Adrian probably covered everything. So if anybody has any questions.
Thank you, Emma. Obviously some very unwelcome figures in there, but obviously right to alert us to the challenges ahead, and a lot of work obviously we'll be doing as we lead up to the business planning process and awaiting developments from government, as you've said. So questions, members, or observations? Councillor Machini, Elisa.
Thank you, Chair. This is where I do my usual, oh my God, I don't understand finance act. But, you know, I always try to work out at least some vague figure, some vague direction from the figures that we see. And obviously we understand that these are quite complicated at the present time. I have seen the three scenario situation. I've seen it in papers of other committees, and it's obviously it's an entirely different question altogether. You know, in the best possible case scenario, we appear to be required to save about 33 million, which I think is beyond anything we've ever saved, certainly during my term of office. So that's one problem, obviously, which we don't know how to fix just yet. I was looking at the People and Communities appendix, which has melted my brain a little bit, but obviously it's not, I mean, the sort of spreadsheet, as it were, isn't specific to this committee, containing quite a lot of adult stuff. And I was wondering if the total net figure at the bottom is in any way related to any kind of overspend or uncovered savings to date, or if it's simply what we expect to spend. And if so, this kind of ties into my general question, which is at which point, I mean, it's going to sound bad. I don't mean it to sound bad. It's not that you haven't done the work because you haven't done the work. It's just at which point can we potentially expect a specific budget plan for this committee, which is usually in December, isn't it? But I kind of have a feeling that usually in October we have a better idea than now of what it will look like. So I was just wondering, you know, when we come here in December, I mean, I already know the answer to this because the answer is we don't know, but how likely are we to see something that looks vaguely fixed, if you see what I mean? But a slight explanation of the bottom figure of the appendix would be good in terms of making me understand just how much of my brain has melted and if there was any way not to melt it. But thank you.
Thank you, Elisa. Emma?
Yep. So in terms of the, are you looking at the section 3A Peoples and Communities document? Because if so, you'll see there is it says total funding of gross expenditure right at the bottom. And there's a figure there that says minus 496,221, and that is the total amount of funding. So that's the total amount of expenditure that is going into people and communities. And I believe I thought I found a balancing number for that somewhere, but I can check that for you. If I'm being entirely honest with you, I am not entirely sure where those numbers tie in with each other. I know that across the entirety of the council, there's that £33 million gap. Right at the bottom, you've got your funding section, and you'll see, yep, you've got your £496,000 at the bottom there. I've caught up with the tables now. And then if you scroll up to the previous page, there's then total gross expenditure, and that says 496. Those two numbers tie in. So at the moment, we're saying that we've identified funding and expenditure in people and communities.
So that means that this is how much we expect to spend.
Yes, it means that we are currently expecting to spend about £496,000 across all of people and communities in 21-22.
Excellent.
£496 million.
I was going to say.
I wish it was only 496.
Yeah.
I was going to say. No, okay. So that's basically. So that's basically that. But so my question is, we are not yet sure exactly how much of that will be covered. Or are we?
Well, so I suppose no, and we don't really tie funding sources down by committee or even by service area. We identify all the spend required. We then fund it all in the table by table, and then in the corporate tables there will then be an overall gap of 33 million.
I see. Because basically the reason I ask is obviously partially it's just plain old ignorance, but the other part is that usually we don't have this level of short-term uncertainty. So usually, you know, when you see the budget, it's kind of like, this is the money we've got. This is the money we've known we've got for quite a while, and this is, you know, the prospect in terms of which is the regular budgetary procedure which I've got used to. It was basically just for, in a way, for you guys to realize that for us it's difficult to grapple with these kind of things when you don't know where this money is coming from. I don't think anyone's ever done it before. So perhaps, but when we come to December, I mean, obviously in the best case scenario, we will all be a lot wiser and everything will be a lot more certain. Somehow I kind of want to consider an opportunity where we might actually potentially not be quite so sure in December either, in which case perhaps some explanation next to the figures as to what the current level of expectation is would be helpful for us to sort of have a bit more of an idea what's actually going on at the present time. I mean, I do appreciate that, you know, finance people have their brain primed for this kind of thing, but I really don't. So that was basically the idea. And it's just because, you know, obviously we should look at the tables in detail, but we should also get a bit of an indication of like some guidance as to what's new and what's different in this budgetary process, which is a little bit unique. But thank you so much for all the explanation so far. That's really helpful.
And we can certainly.
Sorry, Emma, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we can certainly, particularly in the covering paper for the December committee, we can make it a lot more committee specific, which I think would be helpful.
Exactly the point I was going to make.
Thank you, Emma. And as you said, this is a very unusual report. I think normally a lot of what we're predicting, a lot of the challenges would normally be within our own control by October. Whereas because of the situation this year, there's so many unknowns, even by December, I'm sure it will still be a challenge to know exactly how much money we've got coming in and what the full extent of the challenge is. So officers are probably in the dark as much as we are, and will keep us as informed as possible. So any other questions, members, or anything?
Many apologies, Chair. Could I say something else very quickly that has just occurred to me? I know I say this every single time there's a finance paper in front of us, but the funding formula, I mean, I know that I know what the situation is, and we're sort of playing it by ear a little bit and waiting for the review to be done and sort of getting bits and pieces to sort of fix. But I think, you know, it's getting to the point where we would potentially like a bit more clarity around for how long we're going to live with this particular situation, because I understand government heads are busy with, you know, the pandemic and stuff, but this is, you know, it's even more urgent that we do this now. And I would like to think that we would be, I'm not saying in a better financial situation, but in a slightly more certain financial situation if we knew that we had a funding formula related to our actual demographics and not the demographics we had in '85. So with that in mind, is there any possibility of us having, specific with this committee, because we are, you know, obviously we take an overarching approach to demographics and the communities and the needs that we cater for, etc. So obviously, if this was adults, I'd be saying, you know, is there any idea of the sort of the differential between the sort of funding formula we get for our adults need and the funding formula that we actually get, that we would get and that we actually get. Because this isn't adults, I mean, this is probably a bit more of a general question, but is there any indication, I mean, obviously if I could, I'd ask each committee to do this, but is there any indication of exactly how much divergence there is in terms of, you know, the community's approach, and whether we can have, which again, you know, we can't ask government to do it. I wish we could, but it would be nice to actually have a bit of a flag sort of figure to wave it colored in red and say, this is the divergence and this is what we would like the actual figures to look like. Because every time I see it, it irritates me a little bit that this continues to be a problem. Thank you again.
Thank you, Lisa. I think we all agree that the leader and the LGA, of course, are lobbying to get the funding formula changed. And I think it has been delayed yet again, which is a frustration. Adrian, is there anything you can add? I see you're indicating.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to respond in a similar way to say on the officer side as well, our finance director is also very engaged nationally with the lobbying agenda around this theme. Obviously, at a local level, it plays out in reality. And the other point I'd make is that certainly the Adults and the Children and Young People's Committee have done some work to understand in more detail the challenge of the demographic pressures and other demands that they're facing. And I have spoken with the chairman about bringing similar information forward to committee. It may be useful, although November is likely to be a workshop, for us to use some of that information to set the context to the discussion we have in that workshop, because I think it will, Councillor Machini raises a very valid point that our role here ought to be to support some of those challenges that the other committees are facing. That's been the nature of much of our work, and actually setting the scene through looking at the numbers through the eyes of those other committees ahead at the start of our workshop in November might be a useful way of directing the decisions and discussion we have. So I'd be happy to work with the relevant directors to bring that forward if the committee would like.
Thank you, Adrian. Any other questions, members? I see no one indicating, so we'll move to the recommendations, members, which are obviously very early and uncertain, but as good as we can get with the situation at the moment as it is. So the recommendations are to note the overview and context provided for the 2021, 22, 25, 26 business plan, and to comment on the draft proposals for Communities and Partnerships Committee set out in section 5 of the report and endorse their development. So if members are happy and show no dissent, I'll assume that they're both approved. Is there any dissent for that way forward, members? Please indicate. Okay, I see no one indicating, so we'll take those recommendations as approved. Thank you very much. Thank you, officers. So we'll move on to item 10, which is the Communities and Partnerships Committee agenda plan. Over to you, Adrian. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So the proposal is to convert the November committee to a full committee workshop, as previously discussed. What that means is that most of the reports that were due to come to committee in November, with the exception of the libraries report, will move back a month to December. We've discussed that change with all of the lead officers, and there are no service implications as a consequence. The libraries report will come to the January committee. So seeking agreement for that change today, and we'll send out, if members agree with that approach, some more detail on how that workshop will operate and some homework in inverted commas, as discussed earlier, if that's okay, in a few days' time. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Adrian. Everybody happy with that approach? So keep your eyes open for the email with the homework ready for the November workshop. So I'm assuming everyone's happy with that change. Please indicate if not. Nobody indicating. So thank you very much, everybody. That's the last item on the agenda. Thank you for your attendance, officers, and thank you, members. And thank you, members of the public, for watching this meeting. So I'll declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much, everybody.